Hey, this is JD from Best MMA Picks. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/Best MMA Picks. I'm just creating this short video right now to, kind of help some of our fellow sports bettors out there with when they hit the casinos in Vegas or, if you're doing online or Draftkings. Um, just kind of illustrate a couple points here that are really going to help you as far as your sports betting with MMA particularly. Um, One of the reasons why it's so difficult to bet MMA or UFC or Strikeforce or whatever league you're betting on is the simple fact that most of these lines that are created by these casinos are very heavily heavily favored or very heavy underdogs, and a lot of people the line's so expensive for people that they're literally putting anywhere from 3 to 4 times their money to on a fight to get back on a 4-to-1 favorite. um, you're putting down $400 per $100 you're getting back. So it's really not it's not a lot of times these odds are the heavily favored odds are not reflective on what could actually go down in the fight. And a lot of people get knocked out, a lot of people get submitted that shouldn't be. um, you know it happens all the time where there's an upset. And MMA is very unpredictable, especially with heavyweight fights. Vegas likes to make a lot of money on heavyweight fights just because it's really any man's game, no matter how heavy the favorite or how heavy the underdog. Somebody could get knocked out pretty easily. Um, so just kind of keep that in mind. There are a couple things that you could do to kind of get around this. If you know MMA really well, you can pay attention to little things like who they're promoting, who has momentum, who doesn't have momentum. A lot of times they'll have underdogs that maybe aren't really a fan favorite. A lot of people that they tend to promote, and they really like to hype people up that are knocking guys out consistently, finishers, very high risk fighters that are just kind of throw themselves out there. Um, they tend to like Vegas tends to like making money off of these kind of fights because of the simple fact that if you match up a guy who's very technical, methodical with a guy who's really high risk that doesn't have a game plan at all. A lot of times the guy that doesn't have the game plan, the public tends to heavily favor them, and the public ends up getting raped by the casinos when a not so heavy favorite or fan favorite comes into the picture with their technical striking, with solid wrestling. Somebody usually who's kind of a boring fighter that people aren't super crazy about. A lot of times, Vegas will profit off of that because that fighter will end up winning as an underdog, and everybody put their money on this other fan favorite fighter. Um, so yeah, that's one thing. Like I spoke about with the heavyweight fighters, a lot of times these heavyweight fights and fighters, they're favored, 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 favorites. So you're paying a lot of money for somebody that there's no guarantee. And I would almost put a lot of those fights as a coin flip. So you can kind of get around that, betting a lot of heavyweight underdogs. That's where the casinos make their money. That's where you can make money. Another thing that you can do is, really do your research on these fighters. My general rule of thumb when I handicap MMA is, when in doubt, go with the underdog. That's the way that I feel. If I feel like a fight's a coin flip and one guy's favored 150 to a positive 130 on a line, I go with the positive 130 because at the end of the day, if I feel like there's a 50-50 chance for me to, if I flip a coin and this fight's going to go down, 50-50 chance, I'm going with positive money. I'm not paying 1.5 times my bet in order to profit. It's not profitable in the long run. So the other thing is, checking out who's being promoted. A lot of the UFC fighters that are kind of up and coming, they're on momentum. So you try to go and you try to ride that momentum with a lot of these guys, and then they will follow a pattern. If you pay attention, they tend to really hype up guys, get them a lot of television time, get them, UFC broadcasts, uh, video logs and stuff like that. Pay attention to that kind of stuff. Like the Conor McGregor fight, for example. We all knew that Conor McGregor, there was absolutely no way that Conor McGregor was going to lose to Chad Mendes. Even if Chad Mendes had the ability, which he does, to beat Conor McGregor by holding him down to the ground, the UFC promotion is not interested in a fight like that. They were interested in Conor McGregor being such an electrifying and intense fighter. He was going to make the money from the title shot. They were going to make the money from the media with him having a title shot against Jose Aldo, not against Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes has already been in the picture before. So just little things like that, paying attention to how much money they're throwing into promoting a fighter, paying attention to how much screen time fighters get, paying attention to how Dana White reacts to fighters, to how, Lorenzo Fertitta, Sean Shelby, paying attention to how they're matching these guys up with these other fighters. That's also very important. A lot of times they'll give these guys kind of I call them gimme fights, where, they give them a guy who's a bad matchup for the other guy, or the other guy takes a fight on short notice, and it's pretty much like, hey, we're trying to, move you up in the ranks here so that way you can get into a big, either title shot or co-main event. We're doing this for you. We're matching you up with this guy who you could obviously beat because of the fact that we want, you to make us money. So, and a lot of times they will kind of dispose of these fighters after they pump them up for almost like a pump and dump stock. They pump them up, for 2 or 3 fights where they just completely demolish guys, and then they pit him up against a guy who's clearly a superior fighter, and kind of, can target their weaknesses. Perfect example being the Anthony Rumble Johnson fights. He knocked out like 4 or 5 guys in a row, before he got his title shot. And then they had the interim championship between him and Daniel Cormier. Nobody thought that Cormier was going to survive that fight, but Cormier dominated that fight. And that's just a perfect example of how they hype up a fighter, and then they just completely tables on everybody when all the money comes rolling into the casinos, and they fucking rape everybody. So keep that in mind when you're betting. Pay attention to the signs. Hopefully this video kind of helps somebody out there with their betting. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel below. Make sure you follow us on Best MMA Picks. We did really well on the last card. I think we went like 8-5. We should have been like 9-3 with a lot of. There were some really, really bad upsets that should have actually been winning fights. But we're doing a lot better with these fights. And so far, I think we're 8-1 now on all main event fights, which is pretty damn good. So if you don't like playing prelims, play our main events. We're pretty damn good at it. And hope you enjoy the rest of the fights this summer. And thanks for tuning in.